Hey, deserving listeners, Netflix, The Ultimatum. Let's watch.
I think the biggest regret I had on this experience was probably going to make this real for you. And I wish I could have done it differently.
Up until this point, they've been talking about how much they love each other and they want to get married. At least they love each other. They're enjoying their relationship. They're just having a casual conversation. And then he says, the biggest regret I have is that I made it real for you, referring to the fact that he got together with that woman. And she makes a mocking face to that. So it makes sense that she made a face, but if you're ever in that situation, you want to use your words because it can be dismissive to someone, it can be hurtful. If you're just reacting to someone on the bus that you don't care about, I suppose it doesn't really matter. But if you're in a relationship, you're trying to communicate to someone that you don't like what they're saying, and you should explain that in full to the other person. But anyway, getting back to what he said, his explanation of it has evolved. So if I had a speculation, it would be that something led him to trying to create a situation where he was dating someone else. And it wasn't because he was trying to follow Madlyn's directive. That's the way he keeps framing it. I think he either just thought, hey, it'd be a good opportunity. There'd be nothing wrong with him saying, we were all essentially giving each other a hall pass. And my relationship with April wasn't taking off. And so I thought, this is my one chance. So I thought, I'll flirt with this other person. I knew it was only going to be for a couple weeks, and we didn't go that far, but it was fun. And I just wanted to get that out of my system. I'd be totally okay, but that's not what he says. He keeps framing it like, what was he saying earlier? Something along those lines. But what was he saying? He was saying, I did it because you wanted me to, or I did it for you. I did it for you. But now it seems to be evolving. And what I'm guessing is, if we go off the narrative that it was just him going along with what the show was supposed to do, and he was just interpreting the rules a little liberally, then I'm guessing that he, during or afterwards, thought, well, she doesn't like that, and so I'm going to lose her if we acknowledge reality that I did that. And so I need to frame reality, and this is where people will accuse him of gaslighting. But it's not gaslighting. I've seen gaslighting, and I don't know if I've ever seen gaslighting on a reality TV show, and I've watched a lot. This is more motivated reasoning. You could say manipulative, and that's a pretty strong word, manipulative. I think I've said this already in a reaction video. I was talking with my wife the other day, and we were talking about this misunderstanding of gaslighting, and I asked her, I was like, well, before everyone started using gaslighting, what did we say? Because, we're the same age, her and I. And I thought, in middle school, when someone was doing that sort of thing, what did we call it? And she said, manipulative. And I said, yeah, manipulative. Now, what people will say on the internet, when not everyone, but some, when they react to this, is like, he's a psychopathic, narcissistic, love-bombing gaslighter. And that is based on a premise that he has no empathy, that he has no remorse, he is a scammer, he's a liar, and he's a monster. And I attribute this to way too many depictions of psychopaths on TV, and not enough depictions of other sorts of people. Like the TV show You, which me and my wife watched the first season of, which I thought was entertaining. It was a little silly, but that guy's a full-on psychopath, and he kind of looks like that guy. So I feel like people have been gaslit, manipulated, brainwashed into believing that whenever you see this kind of behavior, it's because they're a Hannibal Lecter, the You guy, whatever. And it might be, but it's not usually. Anyway, I say that all the time. But now, so I'm guessing that I think he genuinely loves her and wants to be with her. And so he doesn't have a healthy way of communicating that he made a mistake, and he's worried he's going to lose her. Either it's too vulnerable, it's too quote unquote weak, it would admit that he has a flaw and he can't tolerate that. And so instead he frames it like, you were the one that essentially made me do that. So he still somehow has that narrative, or he wants that narrative to be the narrative. But let's rewind that, because the way that he phrases this is just, it's comical, and the way that she reacts is understandable.
Like a regret? I think the biggest regret I had on this experience was probably going to make this real for you. And I wish I could have done it differently.
Yeah, so on some level, if he just expanded on that phrasing, I could get on board with it. If he said something like, I wanted to marry you prior to us even hearing about this show, and you weren't ready to marry me. And so I thought if we went on the show that it would help clarify. And your thoughts about, I've always wanted to marry you. I still want to marry you. And for you, maybe they had a conversation where she was like, look, I want to date someone else for a little bit of time. I want you to see someone else for a period of time. Maybe she even said that on camera, to make sure that you really want to be with me, because we're young, and sometimes I don't get the impression like you really want to be with me, that you just want to be with someone. And so, and I don't know, I'm just sort of making up a story. And I want to go through this process because I want to know. And then he's saying, well, I know I want to be with you, and so I don't need to go through this. And she's like, well, but I wanted to do it. So he could say, I dated that other person because I wanted to let you date someone else, and it was reciprocal. It was like, we're both doing it. It wasn't just you stepping out. It was both of us doing this thing, and you wanted me to do that. Or I did it because, independent of you, I did it because I wanted to prove to myself that I wanted to be with you. And so ultimately I only dated that person as an experiment to just make sure that I wanted to love you. Like, he could say something like that. But that's not how he phrases it. What he phrases it is, gives at least the impression that you made me, have a relationship with this other random person. I think it's because he believes wrongly that if he explains the truth, she will leave him.
I just hate that you continue to say, like, make it real for me. I didn't need you to, like, hook up with somebody. Like, that's not what I needed you to show me, that, like, you could have, like, some sort of intimate physical connection or something.
Okay, good. So she is explaining, and hopefully he can adjust, or maybe say, oh, I didn't know that, or I don't know. So I was worried this was going to go off the rails, so maybe this will become constructive. I'm curious what he'll say to this.
Yeah. Keep going.
With
Doesn't
us
matter.
talking about marriage here, it was the fact that you were going to be with somebody that is ready to get married, that could possibly even make you realize, shit, I could be with any number of women that could make me happy. It was real for me already.
Yeah.
I didn't need you to do anything else to make it real.
Damn, I wish I would have known that. I didn't.
So you see that face again. Is she playing it up for the cameras or something? She made that face a lot, and her friends made that face a lot. It's not going to help. If you have something to say, there can be a little bit, but that could come across as rude and ridiculing the way you react to a stranger or something. Getting back to what he said, her reaction, or the basis of her reaction, is justified. I think everyone would have that basis of like, what? And he's saying, damn, I wish I would have known that. Essentially saying, yeah, it's your fault that I got together with that person and lied about it afterwards, by the way, which I think she emphasized as the main portion of the pain she was going through. So now the other thing I've been saying is, when you go through particular traumas and you develop a very important defense of coming across as perfect to everyone, because if you convince yourself and others that you're superior and awesome, then you get another minute where you get to avoid the fact that you believe deep down that you're nothing and that you're worthless and not lovable. And you will continually try to, convince the self, convince others that if you did something wrong in the past, that it's really because of someone else's fault, or you were just following directions. And I think he falsely believes that if he just explained why he did it, he could even say, I was with April and it wasn't really working out, and I had this hall pass, as you were as well, and I thought, well, she's probably getting together with him because the way that they seem to be connecting. And I just thought, I don't know, it just felt kind of bad. So I met this random person, we were flirting, and one thing led to another, and I just thought, well, I guess it kind of works. But looking back, I recognize now that that wasn't okay, because we hadn't talked about that. And I feel bad about that. But at the time it felt ethical, but looking back, I guess it really wasn't. And then I didn't tell you about it because, I don't know, I just felt like I was worried you were going to hate me. And I just thought it doesn't really matter because you were getting together with someone and I was getting together with someone. It just wasn't April. But that's not right. He could say something like that, because I imagine that was probably what happened. Who knows? But when you are black and white thinker, because of the traumas you've been through, anything that introduces the idea that you did something wrong threatens the possibility of you falling into the abyss of nothingness and worthlessness.
It's been great to know that then. Why are we going backwards?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So she's making all those faces again. It's, use your words, Madlyn. You can say things like, I don't like what you're saying. It feels like you're blaming me again, and that hurts my feelings. I can't believe you're still on this track. You could say words. The faces and the rolling of the eyes and the oh my gods and the ridicule is, Now, one could look at this and say she's justified. We use it as a jumping off point. And you always want to avoid this kind of behavior in your relationships if you're trying to preserve it. So, and I feel like some people come from a cultural pocket where it's totally acceptable to do that to people. It's not okay. He's saying, why are we going into the past? I think he's starting to panic. So I don't know. There's another hypothesis that he's a psychopathic manipulator, and he has no emotion, and he has emotion, but he doesn't have any empathy, and he is manipulating her, trying to suck her into something. Who knows? Now, psychopaths do have attachment needs, by the way. Just because they don't care about your feelings doesn't mean they don't have attachment needs. Sometimes people conflate those two. Anyway, so he could be a psychopath. It's not likely. So I think there's a good possibility that if he does have at least something akin to what I've been hypothesizing, of which I have no idea. I have 1% the information I would need to be able to assess someone properly. Then in this moment, he looks like he's totally fine. Like he's unaffected. He's smiling. He's like, oh, can we just move forward? He just seems aloof, like he's unfazed. In all likelihood, underneath that shell is a vast sea of distress that's happening for him that is really hard for him to deal with. It doesn't justify the way he's framing it, but it does help us understand why these people do what they do.
No, let's talk about it.
Okay, well then I need you to listen.
Well, I'm listening.
Okay, don't speak until I'm ready for you to speak, please.
Don't
Let
talk
me
to
get
me
my
like
whole word
that.
out.
Why are you talking like this? You're being...
I didn't think she was hostile. She's saying, I'm going to say some things and don't interrupt me. I thought that was reasonable. And then he says, don't talk to me that way. I think that's coming from that distress. I don't think he's doing okay. I don't think, given the way she was reacting even if the cameras weren't there, I think that would be very challenging to watch your spouse do that, even if it comes from a justifiable place. But if we imagine if the hypothesis is true, again, which I don't know, then he is being humiliated right now. And anyone would be challenged because he knows the cameras are there. Anyone would be challenged by that, particularly someone who has traumas around that sort of thing. But anyway, so hopefully he can just, okay, I'll listen because I'm curious as to what she's going to say here.
Very rude. Don't do that.
I didn't know that you had continued a conversation with her until after we had already moved back in together.
Right. But
Is that true or not?
that is true.
So
I'll keep listening.
So how does that line up? You didn't even tell me about it. How could it be real?
I told you that night what happened and when it happened.
He is continuing to double down, and I get why people would call this gaslighting. It is getting close to it. It's going down that road, but it's I don't think he is. So if it were gaslighting, for me to say it was likely gaslighting, we would see her starting to question her own ability to gauge reality. We would see him using intimidation. We would see him really punishing her emotionally for not doing what he wants. And we haven't seen that. It could be happening. And you could argue there were minor bits of evidence in that direction. But anyway, at the very least, what we're seeing is either he is distorted and believes a story that is very strange and is saying, why don't you believe that? People are like that, by the way. Or he semi-consciously knows that he semi-consciously believes that if she doesn't get on board with his very weird narrative, she's going to leave him, and that's terrifying to him. So he's desperate to try to make her believe something. And so he keeps on this track of it's because of you. And then she's like, no. Let's get to the core of the issue. Let's get to the facts. You lied to me, essentially what she says. And he's like, no, I didn't. I told you. And now she's making the face again, which I think in this instance makes sense on some level. But she is reminding him that she had to find out about the relationship and the extent of it by breaking into his phone, essentially, or noticing what was on his phone, on his watch. And he's saying, no, I did tell you. She's like, no, you didn't. It's like talking to someone and saying, the sky is blue. And they're like, no, it's green. It's stop, just knock it off. So let's see how he manages here.
Oh God, this is really bad. It was you trying to make it real for you. It wasn't about me in that moment. So do you regret it or not?
Can I speak now?
Oh fuck, yeah.
Yeah. I regret the way I went about making it real. Yeah, absolutely.
Who did he make it real for?
I wish they would get off the make it real bit. That doesn't make any sense to me. I suppose there could be some credibility to it, but it seems like it's a chosen narrative. And then now she's saying, you're trying to make it real for you. Let's get out of that topic. So you see the demeanor that he has, the desperate attempt to seem like he is in control of himself, that he is smart and knows everything. But I know people like this. I don't know him, but people I've treated like this, underneath a very thin veil is a vast sea of distress and upsetness and fear and pain and anger and humiliation and desperation. So that's what I see as a potential. But I don't see this conversation going well because it's starting to go down a road that doesn't make a lot of sense. And we haven't seen him able to talk about. So he just says, he just did that thing where he said he's taking responsibility, but he's not really taking responsibility. Anyway, let's see what he says.
You, obviously.
You truly see it that way. That you did what you did for me. That was for me, to make it real for me, even though I didn't know anything about it.
You knew all about it. I told you about it. I don't know why we keep going back to this.
Yeah. I mean, I could see why people would get frustrated at watching this and apply the word gaslighting for sure. Like, it is frustrating. It is frustrating. Either he believes his story, which some people are so desperate to will do, or, like I said, he's desperate to, he's on some very, very strange campaign to make her believe something that he believes is important, which is actually pushing her away. And she's doing a really great job because she's really holding on to the facts, and she is asking the questions to get at the core of the matter. I'm actually glad, just for my own curiosity, sake that she's actually asking these questions, because I was curious as to how he would respond. But it's interesting. He's really just doubling down on the whole thing. It's pretty astonishing.
Same conversation.
Oh my God, this is so fucking great. This is literally insane. This is insane. This is fucking insane. I cannot pretend I'm the problem anymore.
Another word that we will use in the clinical world, another phrase, is crazy making. I don't know how we feel about it now that we have reevaluated the word crazy as, stigmatizing, but at the very least, this phrase has been used in clinical conversations. It's not a phrase that I see often in literature, but when you're in a situation like this, however you would describe this, where she's still holding on to reality, he's not overpowering her, he's just holding this this narrative, and he just keeps doubling down, and he's just like, I don't know, what's wrong with you? I don't understand. I'm over here, and where are you? I don't even like, and that if you're Madlyn, you're just like, what is happening right now? It can be what we would call crazy making, where you start questioning, like, am I missing something here? And she even says, like, am I insane, or what's happening?
I can't. And I can't leave here with you. Look at me. I can't be with somebody who can't admit that they're wrong.
Right. And I guess that's another angle to this hypothesis, that with, like I've been talking about, defenses and black and white thinking and self-deluding oneself to uphold one's superiority and specialness, to admit that you did something wrong, even a small wrong, is so threatening to the ego that you will do everything to avoid it, include deluding yourself into believing you're not wrong.
You're making me feel stupid.
You shouldn't feel stupid. I'm not trying to make you feel stupid.
The last thing I want is to lose you. The last thing I want is to put what we have in jeopardy.
Yeah, I believe that. He's been consistent about that, and the vibe I get from him, I think he's being honest right now. Who knows, but I think he is. And it's healthy of him to get to this point. If he does suffer from what he might suffer from, then it's asking a lot. It's reasonable to ask, but it's asking a lot to ask him to change in that way without years of therapy. But he is able to return to vulnerability, and he loves her. He doesn't want to lose her. So I just hope that whatever the issue is for him, because there's something going on, that he's able to explore it properly with a therapist that understands it. And not every therapist understands the kinds of things that I think they would need to understand to truly help him. So you just have to, I'm saying that to y'all so that because sometimes people are like, well, I'll just go to a therapist and everything will be fine. Like, sometimes you have to interview the therapist to make sure that they actually understand the kind of issues that you want to work on, and have a treatment approach that actually will lend itself to that. And it's hard for customers or clients to understand that, and understand what to ask. Sometimes you just have to try them out for a few weeks and see if it actually is helping, and then jump ship if it's not, and find another therapist.
I believe you. I believe that that's really how you feel about things, Colby. Truly, like, look at me in my face. Look at me. I truly believe that is.
Yeah, and that's something you can't live with, and I get it.
So if you're trying to work on the relationship, he led the way by being vulnerable and saying, I don't want to lose you. Because she started saying, I can't do this. He's like, I don't want to lose you. And then she reciprocated, hands, physical affection. I believe you that you believe that. And she knows him better than we do. And I'm guessing what she sees is my hypothesis that due to his defenses, he deludes himself and convinces himself of something, because it's so hard for him to even internally admit to himself that he did something wrong because of the traumas he went through. So I'm guessing at least part of that is along the lines of her awareness, and so she holds us, yeah, I believe you. So now for people on the internet, a portion, when they watch this, they're like, oh my God, she's being gaslit. She believes him. I don't think that's what's happening. I think she knows reality and she knows the facts, but she knows that he loves her and will convince himself of things that are convenient to him.
Look at me. It's not gonna work.
Well, that took a turn. I mean, she's entitled to that, of course, and I think a lot of people would understand her decision there. So, interesting. I wonder what's happening. I wonder if she would say, I believe that he doesn't want to lose me. I believe that he loves me. I also cannot deal with someone that can't admit when they're wrong. He can't even acknowledge reality. It would be such a simple thing. And I'm okay with what happened. I wasn't going to leave him. So this pathological lying, so to speak, I just can't deal. I don't want to deal with that. So I'm out. And, I'd understand that.
I can't marry a man that can't accept responsibility for his actions. I can't be hurt and then apologize for it.
Yeah, this is something to watch out for when you're dating someone. That if someone can't, I mean, people say take responsibility, which is one way of putting it, but another one is just like admit that they made a mistake. And sometimes people are defensive at first. Almost all the time people are defensive at first. But if you have a lot of conversation, they've talked about it, maybe even off camera, but on camera, they've talked about this issue a number of times. And he is still holding to the delusion that it was for her, that essentially she made him do that, and that he did not lie to her or deceive her because he told her, even though it was after she found out. And he just keeps saying that over and over again. And it's a pretty stark example of not taking responsibility. And if you are in a relationship, and beginning a relationship, it is one of those things to look out for, because it's one of the fundamental aspects of being able to have a good relationship is the ability to admit when you're wrong, to have humility. We're all wrong frequently. We are frequently wrong people. And if you can't acknowledge to yourself and other people that you've done something in error, then it's going to be really hard to deal with that person, right? So now, some of you, I'm guessing, have a really hard time admitting when you're wrong, and you want to get help to be able to do that. It's not because you're a jerk face, it's because someone made you feel as though you were worthless because you were slightly wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, you were taught that to be even slightly wrong, or to make a mistake, or to even take an action that was in the moment felt right, but looking back you regret and remorseful about, to acknowledge that is to be essentially abandoned and or rejected or abused or something, and you deserve to recover from that.
I feel like shit for what I did, but it truly is what she asked. And
so you see that, I feel like S because of what I did. All right. People say that on this show. They'll say, I take responsibility. I feel bad for what I did, but she asked me to do that. So it just erases that first part. It doesn't count. You can't say, oh my God, I feel so remorseful, but it's all because it's all your fault. It's like, how can you feel like crap because of what you did, but someone forced you to do it, right? You can only feel bad for what you did because you did something volitionally that was wrong. So, yeah.
I feel stupid for trying so hard for him. And I'm embarrassed that I was willing to do that.
I wouldn't hate yourself, Madlyn, for sure, because his issues are there, seemingly, but he's also a loving, good human being. You can have both. You can do all the things that we think we see that he's doing and be loving and caring and attentive and into you and fun and interesting and all those things. We tend to be black and white when we look at these things. If someone's like that, they must always be like that, but it's not usually the case. So she really appreciated and loved the good side of him and was getting more and more upset and intolerant of the bad side.
He went to another girl's hotel room at 4 o'clock in the morning so that it would be real, so that I would be able to marry him. How little respect for myself would I have to accept that and act like there's not an issue?
All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.